All right, I'm making a short video regarding the last part of Lab 3, where I asked you to create a separate map showing the tornadoes aggregated into these hexagons by month and look at the pattern. This is for two different things. First, two different reasons. First, I didn't adequately explain doing the model. Now, you could certainly do the model without the information that I'm going to present to you, and it would work just fine. But this concept of what's referred to as inline variable substitution is something that you could have gotten from the help, but I didn't mention it, so I wanted to mention it real quick here. So what I've done is I've added another, I've inserted another new map, and I renamed it Tornado Layers, because what this is going to do, it's going to hold all of the layers as I create it. And I've loaded in the two layers that I need to work with to accomplish this task. The first is the tornadoes, and the second is the hexagons. And the hexagons that we created earlier. So I'm going to look at my attribute table, and it does not yet contain this field that I told you all to add, and that was the weight field. So I'm going to do that real quick, and I can make this a long because doing so it's fine, because the points, sorry, not the points, the field that I'm going to manipulate is going to have whole number values. I don't need it to be a float because there's no point whatever. We're going directly from the magnitude field to the weight field with a little bit of adjustment. So I'll go ahead and save this. And once I do that, when I return back to once it saves, when I return back to the tornadoes layer, I'll have a new field called weight right here. So now I just need to calculate the values into the weight field. So I'm going to calculate the values, and as you remember, that basically most of the weight values are just going to be doubled. So weight is going to be magnitude times 2. Let me find it. Magnitude times 2. Okay. So if I run this, I will get I'll get a column that has the weights. Now if I sort these weights ascending, you'll see that I have a bunch of -18s and a bunch of zeros. And remember, if you look back at the lab, those all need to be assigned a value of 1. One way to do this would be to select those records that have the value of 0 or -18. Remember, -9 is one of the values. So there are a whole lot of them, because it makes sense that, you know, as tornadoes happen, most of the time they're not that strong. So I could either select them by saying select by attribute, which is probably actually the better way to do this, or I was saying to somebody else that we could just manually select them. But in order to manually select them, we kind of have to know where they start and end. It's taking too long to do the manual selection. Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to go select by attributes, and I'm going to select the tornadoes, create a new selection, and I'm going to say where, I could either say where magnitude, or I could say this new weight field. But if I say magnitude is less than or equal to 0 and run these are all the tornadoes that had a relatively minor magnitude. See how I can see that? All right. I don't know why this keeps going over there. So now if I recalculate this field again, it's only going to operate on the selected fields. So I can change all of them to 1. So I don't need to change anything else. Just run it. And now I have a bunch of weights assigned. See, we go through here, and we've got the weights. All right. So I'm going to now clear the selection. I'm going to show you one more thing while I'm here, and that is I'm going to add another field called weigh to. You do not have to do this. I'm just demonstrating another way that we could have done this if we knew a little bit of, just a slight bit of Python programming. So I'm going to go back over here. And now I'm going to calculate this weigh to field. I'm just going to calculate it in a different way. So the field name I'm going to calculate is weigh to. And what I'm going to do is put the name of a function in, and that I'm going to write down here in the code block, because that's what this is. So I'm going to put the name of a function. I'm going to call the name of my function find w for find weight, and then I have to put in as the parameters to this function any values that I want to be fed into the function, separated by commas. So I'm going to put it in as magnitude. That's all I need. So when it goes and calculates this function, it's going to feed magnitude in as one of the parameters. So now I need to go ahead and write my function find w, and I need to come up with a name for the variable inside, which I'll just call x. All right, and I'll write a simple. If you don't understand this, it's fine. And I'm not going to take the time to explain exactly what's going on, but this is a simple Python function. So now I just say if x is less than or equal to 0, return 1, else return x times 2. So it's a simple formula here. So magnitude gets fed in, and that becomes x into this. Every time, for each record, it comes through, it finds the magnitude value, feeds it in for x, and then it enters this function. And if x is less than or equal to 0, it's going to return a 1 and put a 1 here. If magnitude is greater than 0, it's going to multiply x times 2 and return that value to put into here. So that's the way that you read that. All right. So I'm going to run this, and the only reason why I'm doing this, running this real quick, is to show you that they're going to create equivalent values. They always equal each other. So we've got 1s where we've got 1s, we've got 10s where we've got 10s. Those were magnitude 5s. And if we go down here, we got 2s where we had 2s. So both of those things that we did were equivalent. So these were magnitude 2. So let's go over here and we'll see that. Magnitude 2 over here equals having weight, and weight 2 equals 4. Okay, so the advantage of doing it the way I did it with this function is that it's one less step. It might also be easier to automate, like if you wanted to do it over and over and over again, or you want to change the value slightly and put it into a program, it might be slightly easier to do it this way. Okay. However, if you put it in a model, it might be just as easy to do it the other way. Right? But to do this, I had to put it into a specific mathematical function. To do it the other way, I did it with the GUI interface. Okay, now that I have those values, we can start building the model. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the toolbox, and I have to insert a new model. So that's under analysis. I'm going to create a new, a new model, a new model builder model. I'm going to put this up here rather than, oops, I meant to put it in the same, yeah, there we go. There we go. So here's my model, here's the tornado layers, and this model is fairly simple. We did talk about this for a second in class, that basically what you need is a select paired with a spatial join. And doing that, you'll get the output that you need. So the first tool that I want to do is the select. And either of these will work, select or select layer by attribute. There are probably good reasons to do either one. I'm going to do select layer by attribute. The difference between these two is that a select actually takes a new layer, creates a new layer, and select layer by attribute basically just turns them blue. So either one will work fine, but select layer by attribute won't create another layer on disk. And since we don't need that intermediate layer, I'm not going to use it. If you wanted the intermediate layer, like for example, if you wanted to see the selected layers, if you wanted to make sure that it was working, you wanted to look at the tornado in all the tornadoes in January and all the tornadoes in February and all the tornadoes in March and so on, then you would definitely want to go with this select. Okay. All right, and so I'm going to click this, and I'm going to choose as the input rows the tornadoes because I want to select out just the tornadoes for each month. And actually, I'm going to leave this blank for a second. I kind of got ahead of myself, so I'm just going to hit OK here. And I don't really need this. Oops. I guess that just stays there. That's fine. Okay. Now what I really need to do this concept of the inline variable substitution is to go back up to the model builder window and insert a new variable. So I'm going to create a new variable, and it's just going to be a string. And I'm going to say OK. So here's my new variable. And see how it's called string? I don't want it to be called string. I want it to be called month because that's what it represents. Now it doesn't. I don't have to rename it. This is just something to help me remember what it represents. So month. So this is going to be my inline variable. And I'm actually going to fill that with a value. I'm going to fill it with the value 1. Okay. Now the reason I'm doing this is that I'm going to go back into the tornadoes layer. Sorry, not the tornadoes layer. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this tornadoes input, just so we know. Now the select layer by attributes, I'm going to click on that select layer by attributes, and now I'm going to go into the expression to edit the expression. Now you probably all realize that this would work just fine if I went and said that the month, oops, I didn't mean to hit that. I messed up there. New expression. If I said month is equal to, look at all the choices I have for month. These are all the unique values. So what do you think these values represent? Well, of course, 1 represents January, 2 represents February, and so on. So I'm going to choose 1, okay? And then I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to say okay, but you could see how if this was the clause, month is equal to 1, that would be just fine. That would work. What I want to do is I want to change this to SQL so that I can use my inline variable substitution. So I'm going to change this to SQL, and you'll see that this is what it says, MO equal to 1. I'm going to change that, and instead of saying equal to 1, I'm going to say percent month percent. What you put in there, month, needs to be exactly what's in here. Okay, so that variable matches this variable. This is what's referred to as inline variable substitution. So if you read this this help, you'll see what I'm explaining right here. Okay. So whatever value is stored in this bubble, which right now is 1, is going to fly in here and be stored as the value here. And this will allow you to run your model without going in and changing the layer. I mean the values in the bubbles. So I'm going to say OK there, and now I'm going to add the other thing that I need, the spatial join tool. So here's the spatial join tool. Oops. I'm going to drag it on. And the spatial join needs to go, the tornadoes need to go into spatial join. They're going to be the join features. In other words, the features that are giving their attributes to the target features. What are the target features going to be? Y'all remember? This time they'll be the USA hexagons. All right. Go back in there. My phone, it's going slow. Target features are going to be the US hexagons. And then the tornadoes will be the join features. And then I want to do the join 1-to-1, but I need to make sure that I either take my weight or my weight 2. You guys will just have a weight. And say that you want the sum. In other words, you want the total value for weight 2. The merge rule should be intersect because any portion of the tornado hits that hexagon, we're gonna choose it. So nothing else needs to change here. So I'm gonna say OK. All right. One thing I'm going to do here is fit this to window and then go like that. There we go. All right. Now at this point, oh, I do want to change the output so they won't get overwritten each time. So one thing I need to do that, okay, this thing's taking forever to open up. There we go. Here's the output feature class. And I want the output feature class to be to be actually named so that it also has the month variable associated with it. So I'm going to change this to where it says US underscore hexagons underscore tornadoes underscore percent month percent, and it has to be the exact same. So now when this saves, it'll save as US underscore hexagons underscore tornadoes underscore 1. And the next time through it'll say 2 and so on. So I'll say OK. There we go. Now I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to validate. And I'm going to look at the catalog here. The database is where it's going to save all the information out. Okay. Now I'm going to run this guy. So it ran. Oh, sorry, it's not run. Oh, it did run. Yep. Okay, so it ran. And now if I refresh this, I should have a USA hexagon tornadoes 1. Okay. Let's look at this. Oh, look, it actually highlighted those tornadoes that were in January. And if I add the hexagons from this layer, sorry, yeah, they're there. Let's turn these other layers off for a second. So these are the tornadoes that had hexagons in January. And then I could symbolize these by that field, that sum of the magnitude field, sum of the weight field. Graduated colors. That's just the raw join count. Wait, There we go. That's the sum of the weights. So you can see where more tornadoes happened and less tornadoes happened. Okay. All right. So let's continue on in our model. So now the advantage to this setup is that I just click into month, and I can change this to 2. I don't have to change anything else. Just run it. I mean, I hit validate and I hit run again, and now it did 2. And I won't keep doing this, but this time I'll do it one more time. If we go back over here and refresh, you'll see now that I have the tornadoes 2 and so on. So I'm going to do this 12 times. 3. Okay, validate, run. Okay, that's done. Double click. 4. Okay, validate, run. X that out. Double click. 5. Validate, run. 6. Okay. Validate, run. 7. Okay. Validate, run. Whoops. I'm almost done. 3 more to go. Validate, run. 10. Validate, run. All right, so here's the last one. Now, as I was doing this, I was thinking that, all right, close. I was thinking that I wanted to show you something, but it didn't really work out last time. Okay, so now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's great. And we want to load all those up and symbolize them and show the results as we discussed in class. One more thing I wanted to do though is it is possible, and I want to try this out. I'm going to put this on the video. I might cut the video out if this doesn't work out, but because I didn't plan on doing this. You can actually tell inside of model, you can actually have it do something over and over and over again. And so I'm going to go insert a for statement. So what this is it's like a little loop that'll do something. It'll do something over and over and over again. So we could say we want to go from 1 to 12 by ones. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to try to experiment with is to go in here and let's see what this is. We'll make that, whoops, not a parameter. I'm going to make this, I wonder what that'll be. Okay, so anyway, what I want to do is go in here and say percent value percent and try to run this that way. So validate, oops. I'm going to rename this so that it doesn't overwrite the successful data they've already written out. So validate, run. It is running it 12 times. Let's see if it's doing month equals 3, month equals 5. Let's see that let's see if it actually created those tornadoes 2 folders. So I'm going to refresh this. And yeah, it created them all right there. So yeah, that worked. So putting this little for loop in, and again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about why this works. If you want this, it's definitely in the help. But this for loop runs this model over and over and over again and creates equivalent data. At least I think it's equivalent. We could check it really quick. We'll see if it worked for Tornadoes 1. So these should be the exact same layers, these two layers. So I'm going to load that on there. Yep, they look very similar. See if we try to choose to symbolize them the same way. We'll symbolize them based on not join count, but weight. There we go. They look exactly the same. So we here I made an extra addition to our model that it basically allows us to run it 12 times all at once. So I ran this. Now you might say, well, you probably spent as much time making that model as you would have pressing all the buttons, which I actually don't even think that's true. It'd take a long time to press each of these buttons. And then you would think that it would actually be hard because you'd have to change the values in at least 2 different places, I think 3 different places, right here, and you'd always have to make sure you did it right. If you didn't do it exactly right, like if you didn't update one of the values to be 1 where it should have been 1 instead of 2, then your data wouldn't be right. And so this allows you to be very consistent and perform it very quickly. And so I would actually always recommend creating a model in a scenario such as this, and not pressing all the buttons. And then the other advantage to doing this is if your data ever changed, like if I wanted to do this, again, once we got new tornado data in, I have the model already to run. So, all right. So let's get on to the other topic that I wanted to do, and this is basically what I'm going to do is show you how to make an animation in ArcGIS Pro. This is something that a graduate student of mine here on the Hattiesburg campus showed me recently. And I wasn't too familiar with doing animation in ArcGIS Pro. And so he showed it to me, and I'll actually make this an alternative. So if you want to make an animation of your of the change month to month, rather than making the layout, you can do that. Turn in the animation. You might have to it might be, I don't know exactly how big it's going to be, but if it's too big to upload into Canvas, you can upload it onto YouTube and then share a link, or you can just make the original data the way that I had planned it. All right, so let's talk about this real quick. The first thing that we have to do is to load all of the data on here to create the animation, and then symbolize it. So get it the way you want it symbolized, and and the way you want it. So I got to load. Let's see if it'll let me select multiple values. It does, but those aren't the ones I want. Okay, so I'm going to select 2 through 12 because those are the ones that aren't on here already. 1 is already on there, so select 2 through 12, throw it on there. So now I have a bunch of hexagons, and I've got to decide here. I'm going to put 1 up above on the very, very top. I got to decide here what what symbolism I'm going to use. I think I'm going to insert a group layer. I don't really need to do that. I think it might help. But, all right, so now I've got to adjust the symbology here so that's always the same. In ArcGIS, in ArcMap, there was a way to let's see, import symbology. Add symbology from layer. That's pretty cool. Let's see if this works. Whoops. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, so for layer tornado 2 here, what I'm going to do is try to do this, where I import the symbology from another layer. So here I'm importing the symbology for 2. I'm going to import from 1. Okay, and I want to maintain the ranges. Yeah, that way the range of the highs and lows will be the same. So I'm going to run this, and let's see if that's applicable. So that would be 1 versus 2. At some point, I think there's going to be more tornadoes, like in the middle of the year. So these same ranges might not apply. Let's look at what these are, actually. Let's see what these weights represent. So this represents graduated colors, but I'm using natural breaks. I wonder which one would be the best. I wonder which, let's go ahead and see which month probably has the most tornadoes. This might have been good to check earlier. Let's see here. If we select unique or graduated colors and select the weight, that goes all the way up to 156. That's pretty high. So that's June. Let's see what 8. Let's see what happens in 8. Graduated colors. That goes back down to 62 actually. So 156 looks like it's the most. Sorry. Okay. I'm trying to find. Yeah. So this one goes up to 228. So it looks like that one has even more. All right. So let's assume that that's the highest value in May. Maybe it's not. Let's do one more. Graduated colors. Weight. 182. So it does look like that's the peak. May is the peak for the tornadoes. All right, so I'm going to turn off all these other layers except for May. So that's May. And I'm going to symbolize May the way I want it symbolized, which I don't want to use natural breaks. I'm going to use, what should I do? How about, let's experiment a little bit. So here's natural breaks, here's quantile. That doesn't look very good. Equal interval. Definitely don't want that. Defined interval. Geometric interval. Standard deviations. That actually might be pretty good. So this shows how unusual it is. You know, how far away from the average that it is. So it might be good if we do really quick. I'm going to go back to natural breaks. No. Nah. Yeah, maybe I'll do standard deviation. All right. Then I think what I'm going to do is going to make my US hexagons layer in the background. I'm going to make that be the same color as my lowest class. All right, so right now I should have only 5 on, and what I want to do is take the US hexagon layer and make it the same exact color as this symbol. So I don't know what color that is, but that's the color I want, so that the lowest value is the lowest everywhere. Let's see if I can find that color. Hopefully it's just like this. Yep, those look pretty close. I think they're the same. It might be slightly different. I don't know. I can't tell. So now I can see the United States. And remember that the animation is going to be about that level. So I think I want to make the, I think I want to just get rid of the outline width. I don't really want the outline. Maybe some of you might want it, but I don't like having the outline. So I'm going to actually change that in here too. I'm going to change the outline width to 0 for all of these. Okay, so those are slightly different colors of yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and just fudge this a little bit and make it the exact same color. So now those are the exact same colors of yellow. And now I'm going to go change each of these to be no outline color. No color, apply, and no color, and 2 more times. There's probably a way to do this a little bit better. Cartography usually takes some effort and time. Whereas if you can get your processing down using, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. I'm just going to hit cancel so I can go back. There we go. All right. So that's that. Man, that yellow color is kind of intense. I wonder if I should have chosen a whole different color scheme. But anyway, you all can choose a different color scheme if you like. One thing that we could do for our animation is to put in a base map again and make the base map kind of muted. So here's, we've got this dark gray canvas base map. And we could actually, maybe, let's just try making this no color. And this one no color. So in other words, what we're doing here is that is that we're only seeing the areas that got tornadoes in our animation. I still want that lowest class to be 0. I mean to be yellow, I think, though. So then I'm going to add that back. Okay, so basically, if it has a tornado, it's still yellow. But if it doesn't even have a tornado, I think I'm just going to leave that background 0. I do want to turn off the labels. There we go. And I don't really need this stuff open here. This will probably fit better. So now I'm going to zoom in to just that area. Wish I could turn the label off for. for that layer, but it doesn't look like it can. All right, now I'm going to go through and reassign all of the. So it's 5. Although I'm going to save this. It's 5, layer 5 that I'm going to pull the symbology from. So I'm going to go in here to 1, import the symbology from 5, and say run. And then I'm going to check that out. So this is what that'll look like. And then I'm going to do this again. Now I'm on 2. So I'm going to go 2, make sure this is 2 and 5, run it. And then make sure this is 3 and 5, run it. 4 and 5, run it. 6 and 5, 7 and 5. So I'm just basically pulling the symbology from layer 5 into these other layers. And so the other layers won't look as intense. Did I already do 8? It doesn't really matter if I do these twice. And 5. I'm pulling them into these other layers. And so none of them will look as intense, and that's fine. So here's the way 1 looks. Here's the way 2 looks. They don't look as intense because they don't have as many tornadoes in those months. And then you can see it go up. Right. So now we're gonna make our animation. I'm gonna start with 1. So in order to create an animation, one more save. Actually, before we do that, in order to create an animation, we go to the View tab and add an animation. So that's what this tab does. Adds an animation. Once we add an animation, we get a few different layers that we get to see. I'm gonna make this bigger. Or a few different new items that we get to see. Just make this smaller. Can I put this somewhere else? I guess that's where it goes. Okay, that fits the window pretty good. All right, so I'm going to create my first keyframe, and a keyframe, it basically is part of your timeline. And so I'm going to create this keyframe. So now I have my keyframe, and I have to show you what this is, okay? Now, every time I create a new keyframe, if I change something, then that thing will be visible in the next keyframe, but not visible in the previous keyframe. I can actually pan and move the map around. I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's necessary for our effect, but I think it would be a nice effect for some other types of animations. So for us, all I'm going to do is click that, click this on, and keep creating new keyframes. So down here, I just hit the plus button. So now I've got a new keyframe. I'm going to turn this off, turn this on, and create another keyframe. Yep. Wait a second. Did I mess up somehow? I don't know if I messed up or not, so I'm going to go back. I can't tell from these. Okay, let's try it. Let's start over. All right, that one I know is 1. Or at least, actually, I don't even know that. I'm pretty sure that's 1. It looks a little too busy though. Let's delete that one too. No. Yeah. Let's just make sure that I did this right, because I think I might have gone too quickly. So with just one on, I'm going to create a keyframe. There we go. I'm going to wait until it's all ready. Okay. And then, now it's all ready. So now I'm going to turn off 1, turn on 2, and hit the create keyframe button again. Wait till it's all ready. Wait till this is highlighted again before I turn on 3. Okay, great. Okay, it's all ready. 4. This is kind of boring. You might want to fast forward through this, but let's make sure this works. 6. So now we're on 6. I guess I don't need to narrate this, so I'll just be quiet for a second. All right, so you can see I've got all 12 down now, right? So now I can actually do this little playback, and it'll show me the results. As in this. I don't know if it's because I'm connected and recording. I'm not sure why that. Because when I go like this, I can definitely see him. Well, let's try to export this and see if it works. I'm not sure why. When I did do this beforehand, and it seemed to work, but I'm not sure why it isn't showing up. But let's try to export it, movie. Let's just do it as a 180p, 1080p. It's going to be an MP4. It's going to put it right there, 30 frames a second. It's going to be 33 seconds long. I actually think it should be shorter. I wonder if I can. I mean, I'm not super familiar with this, but anyway, let's export this, and we'll see what this looks like. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, but you can experiment with this, and if you create a successful animation and it shows the tornado pattern by month, you can do that instead of doing the other map, or you could just keep doing the other map. But anyway, I hope you learned something good here, particularly about the inline variable substitution on Model Builder. And the other things I pointed out, like the animation and the Python execution of calculate field. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and that's it. Let's go ahead and stop the recording.